sober. Wait, I gotta start. If anybody's here for the first time, welcome to my show. If you like it, please subscribe. And I have a Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/busy living sober and you can subscribe and you get more content there. And then if you're back, I'm so glad you're here. And I'm really excited about today's guest. And I know I say that a lot, but I have known this guest since she was in first grade.
Mhm.
First grade, you were a baby. I actually called my daughter Hadley. They were in the same class in elementary school, middle school, and high
Mhm.
school. So I have known her. Her older sister actually did crew with
Yep,
my daughter Hadley for a
yep.
long, long time. And your little sister was in my youngest son's class. So I have known their family for so long. The only thing was separating us really was this little road called Lancaster Avenue, Route 30, which is a 2-lane road that goes north and south. I think, no, it goes east and west. It
Yeah.
actually goes east and west. And so it's kind of funny. And I have known you, but your story, I don't know
Yeah.
because for one, there's all these people always whisper down the lane about other people, and I don't believe most of it because I think a lot of it's BS. So I'm really excited that I reached out to you, and you now work at Penn. We're going to get to that, but I want to hear what it was like, what happened, and where you are today. If you would tell us your story.
Yeah. So I I guess my story kind of starts in high school. I started drinking when I was around 15. Um, and yeah, high school was tough. I'm sure your kids remember Radnor High School as being like it was tough. It was hard to navigate. Yeah, it was a tough environment. So when I started
I mean,
drinking,
I'm
what'd
going
you
to
say?
interrupt you for 1 second because it
Yeah.
was so tough that, let's be honest, my kids have never been back. They were like, okay, we're out of here. They go back
Yep.
for a holiday. I think they go back for Thanksgiving and that's about it. And then they bail out. They're like, Mom, nobody's doing it. It's kind of funny.
Yep. Yep. That's pretty much the vibe. I'm the same way. Like I go home to see my parents and that's about it. But yeah, I enjoyed drinking a lot and I would drink relatively often on the weekends. Like it wasn't something I was doing every day, but on the weekends I would drink and um I would drink to the point of blacking out. Like once I started, I didn't really know when to stop. And so I'm sure that you've heard about prom and my experience at prom. So
Tell my
I
listeners because I don't want them to be like, oh my gosh, what is she talking about? I want to hear
Yeah,
more.
what's prom?
Okay, so tell me more. Tell me more.
So at prom, senior prom, I drank. It was at the Please Touch Museum, and
Yes.
I was drinking with my friends. And when we got back to post prom, which post prom was at the high school, um, I was very intoxicated, and the principal took me to like the office, and I was like sitting there for a few hours actually, with the principal and the vice principal kind of just getting like drunker and drunker because like I was drinking a lot on the party bus, and they ended up calling the police. And yeah, I was belligerent. The one thing about my drinking is I could get very angry very quickly, and so I was just like absolutely belligerent, and I was like yelling at, sorry, my cats might make an appearance as well. I have two.
Okay.
Um so but yeah, I was calling the vice principal some really mean names. I was calling the principal some really mean names. And then the cops came, Radnor police, and they called my mom and they were like, "Hey, I know. Yeah." And they were like, "You can come pick her up or we can take her to the station." This was at like 3 in the morning. And my mother, in typical Trisha fashion, was like, I kind of want them to take her to the station. And she ended up coming through. But she did for a second was like, I just want Trainer to learn her lesson. But she came, they breathalyzed me, and they ended up citing me for underage drinking and public intoxication. Um, and I got 32 hours of community service and 12 hours of alcohol classes for that. And then, sorry, let me put my computer on Do Not Disturb. Um, So yeah, so that was tough. And then, but my parents were kind of, I had had other bad experiences with drinking up until then, and my parents would like talk to me about, especially my mom, would be like, hey, uh, issues with alcohol runs in the family. Like, I just want to make sure that you're okay. But like also kind of coming from the place of like, if I force Trainer to do anything, she's gonna pull away from our family. So after prom, I was very grounded, very in trouble, but my parents were also kind of like, it happens, like it is what it is. Get through this community service, you'll be good. You're going off to college, that kind of thing. And then a month, this is Buffy, she wants to come say hi. But a month later, I was arrested again. So this was at senior week, and I got arrested again.
I want to go back and tell people because I have people
Yeah.
listening from all over the place. And so I want to tell people, okay, their high school, this high school, Radnor High School, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
the guy who wrote the movie Grease went
Yes.
to Radnor High School. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine what prom is. So back in the day, it's literally the parents go all out on, I mean,
Yes.
it's like literally the parents are reliving their childhood in some ways. And
Yep.
then they make this gym at school into this, and it's a very tight knit community. The graduating class was, I think it was 305, wasn't it?
Yep. It was about 300. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Very
so,
small.
yeah, very small when you think about it. So it's a very small group. It's very, incestuous in some sort of ways because everybody
Yep.
talks about everybody. And it's so funny because I actually was talking to a dear friend this morning about how life really is like high school, right? It really is. Like the
Hmm.
popular people are still with the popular people. And then the people that were over here are with I mean, that's how we go through life in so many ways.
Yep.
And so, what it must have felt like to be at Rydell High with all these people and all this hoopla going on all around you, to then be thrown into a room and said, all right, what are we going to do? And your mom feeling probably like, oh my gosh, I'm so ashamed. And, all these crazy feelings, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think it was a lot of um yeah, like everybody knew. I was suspended the week after. And my younger sister Ainsley was a sophomore at the time when I was a senior. And she said that the people asking her questions about what happened, like they were like, I heard that Trainer was airlifted from the high school and sent to the hospital. I heard Trainer punched the principal in the face. Like all these rumors were just like running rampant. And it's because it was so small and tight knit. And like my Ainsley was getting kind of sick of it. She was like, sure, yeah, Trainer did all of that. Like at that point, she was like, I literally don't care. Like, and I was like, thanks, Ains, that's helpful. But yeah, it was very small. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody knew about it. It wasn't, looking back on it, I mean, it was bad, but it also like, I don't know. I don't know if that's like what I'm remembered for. Like sometimes I think about that and I'm like, do people like look back at Trainer from high school and is like, oh, it's the girl that got arrested at prom? I feel like I did a lot more in high school than that, but it is what it is.
I want to ask you something. So, if by chance any educators are listening to this, or any superintendents, or, administration are listening to this, did you feel like, that was the right thing for them to do to you? Like, do you think that was the right approach? Do you think maybe it would have been easier if they would have just said, you know what, you weren't, how old were you? 17 or were you 18?
18.
Okay, so you were 18, so you're an adult, quote unquote, even though let's
Yeah.
all face like an adult. I mean, you
Yeah.
can go fight for our country, but and you can't drink alcohol legally, but you can go
Yep.
fight for our country, which doesn't make any sense at all to me. And any, it's just insane. But it's kind of like, what would have been a better way to handle it, do you think? Instead of like going and making this like total scene about it. Because you were
Yeah.
a kid.
Yeah. Um, and we'll talk a little bit more about my job. But basically right now what I do is I work with students that go to the emergency room for substance use. And I think that the way that we handle it with college students, because like college students are adults, right? They're ages 18 to 22. Grad students could be even older. But they're still like so young. And I think that having that like follow-up conversation instead of that disciplinary action is really helpful. So like one rule that a lot of colleges have is like medical amnesty. So if you call for help, like somebody needs to go to the emergency room, they won't get in any disciplinary trouble with the university, but there still is going to be that follow-up where they're like, hey, going to the emergency room is really scary. Being blackout drunk is really scary. Like, let's check in. Where do you think your night went wrong? What could you have done differently? What are some like, could you have drank more water? Could you have drank less? Could you, like all of those conversations I think are helpful to happen, but I also think it's coming from a place of caring instead of like a, you're going to get arrested, we're going to breathalyze you, you're going to have, I did 32 hours of community service, 12 hours of alcohol classes. Like, I think that like discipline wise, maybe I learned my lesson, but like also not really, right? Because I went on to continue drinking for another 6 years. Like, I just think there was definitely a better, more compassionate way to handle it than how my high school handled it, for sure.
And did you learn anything from these 32 hours of, community service? Did you learn anything from these alcohol classes at all? I mean, was your brain, because that's what I really like to, because I'm all about educating people, because I feel
Mhm.
like, let's be honest, like at 18 years old, your brain isn't even fully developed. You're not even 25 yet, right? So
Nope.
for a woman, you have to be 25, right? For your brain to
Mhm.
be fully developed.
Mhm.
So going and treating kids to this punishment that they don't learn anything from, right? I mean, really, you don't learn anything. And did you know about the family component that you had that your mom had mentioned to you? Did you know about that person?
Yes, yeah, I did. But I don't think I learned, what I did learn was to be extremely wary of cops. Like from
Oh,
then on. Yeah, which I don't think was helpful. I think that like the way that the Radnor police treated me that night was really wrong. Like the one officer, they were trying to get me to blow into the breathalyzer. I just like was not. Like I was belligerent. I was like, not doing it. He actually like in front of my mom grabbed my face and was like, you need to blow. And my mom was like, you need to not touch my child. So it just like I just from then on did not trust cops every time I was like out using substances. Like I was very like aware of the police. I like didn't want to deal with them. Um, and so I don't think that that was helpful. I think community service was a waste of time. Like it was just a bunch of people from Delaware County trying to just like waste everybody's time. Like there was this one day that I did community service where we had to like take everything off of these shelves, take the shelves apart, move them 5 feet to the left, put the shelves back together and put everything back on the shelves. Like they were just wasting time. Like it wasn't like we were like making anything better, you know? So I don't think I really learned anything. I think I met some really cool people through community service, but I don't think that it was like a lesson learned for me at all.
so wait a minute. When you said met some really cool people, because I like to call people, because I'm an addict myself, right? I'm an
Hmm.
alcoholic myself, so I can call myself this. So it's not to be. I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but I feel like I go to the land of misfit toys, and I
Hmm.
meet other people from the land of misfit toys that I like to play with, that I can do my stuff with. And
Yeah.
then they aren't looking at me like some other people that aren't from the land of misfit toys, who might be like, what do you, I mean, the people that aren't from there look at us like, oh my God, what are you doing? You're scaring me. Where the land
Yeah.
of misfit toys are like, oh my God, I totally love this. Bring it on. So
Yeah.
is that the type of people you met when you were at your community service?
Not, no, not, I
Okay.
mean, I guess they were all from the land of misfit toys, but it wasn't people there for drinking or
Oh,
substance use. Like if there were some people who were there for underage drinking, but like also just a lot of people. One person was there because they had been in jail for 12 years and they were on probation and like doing like their probation. Another person, she was on her fourth DUI. Another person like had like custody battles with their kids and ended up like kidnapping one of their kids. Like it was a lot of very different people that I was meeting and a lot of like very different stories, which I thought was really interesting to meet people and like hear their stories. My mother did not. My mom was like, I feel like you're with like actual criminals and you just underage drank. And so there should be a program through Delaware County for folks who just underage drink. but I thought it was really like I thought meeting all these people was really cool, and like hearing everybody's stories was interesting, but I'm also just like I'm a story person. I like to know everybody's life. So I thought that aspect was cool, but my mom did not, no.
I'm sure not, because let's face it, that's not the environment you were really raised in. And
Yeah.
so, and that Delaware County wouldn't think that that was like not appropriate. Like you're with adults. I mean, these people are
Yes.
real adults with
Yep.
real life issues that at this point, as an 18-year-old, you're like worried about like, where am I going to college and who am I going
Yeah.
to hang out with and how am I
Mhm.
going to manage this stuff that's really scary? Because
Yes.
I know with my kids, I felt like, I mean, I raised them in a bubble and they felt like that too, right? They're like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, we haven't seen a ton of diversity. We don't
Mhm.
really see, like, you weren't hanging out with moms, or at least that that you knew of, that
Yeah.
had had 4 DUIs or someone that
Yes.
had been in prison for 12. Like, they might have been among us, but you didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
And to
No, we
process those feelings, I think as an 18-year-old, as great as the stories are, you're kind of like, wow.
yeah. It was a lot. And you're 100% right. I mean, there definitely is like the Radnor bubble. Like I was definitely raised in a bubble. Not Radnor is very white, very wealthy, not a lot of diversity happening there. Um, and it was my summer going into my freshman year of college. Like I was like, what's my dorm gonna look like? Who am I living with? Like my issues were definitely much different than what the folks I was doing community service with was. So yeah, it was a lot. Like looking back on it, I learned a lot. This is Buffy, by the way. Her her full name is Buffalo Chicken Dip. She goes by Buffy. But yeah, looking back on it, I'm like I learned a lot, and at the time, I think I was just trying to like make it as positive as possible. Um,
But
but
it
yeah,
me-
it also.
but it didn't have any effect on whether or not you were going to drink or not. So
Oh no,
so you get in trouble again. How much longer?
a month later,
Okay, in
I
what
got
town were you then? Where were you then?
Ocean City, Maryland. It was senior week. So at the end of when seniors graduate at Radnor, they go on what's called senior week. And it used to be in Ocean City, Maryland. I don't know if it still is, but like basically they have like themed nights and like everybody gets their houses and like you go to each other's houses and like just like party and just get drunk the entire time. Um, and I got arrested. We were at a party with people that we didn't know. It
Mm,
wasn't like other Radnor people. It was people
mm.
that we had met down the shore. Um, and yeah, I didn't know them. And they cited everybody at this party for, I asked the officer like what I was being cited for because I wasn't that intoxicated at the time. Like it was like early in the day and like the officers just like showed up because the party was really loud. And they cited us, my citation was for being in the vicinity of alcohol. So I was like, I could have gotten cited at a restaurant then. Like that's the stupidest citation I've ever heard. But still happened. And I got 20 hours of community service for that. Which I actually liked that community service more because it wasn't like I had to do it, but I could do what I wanted to do. So I actually volunteered at Francisville Animal
Mhm, mhm,
Hospital
mhm,
in
mhm,
Wayne.
mhm.
And I did lawn work because they have this giant pet cemetery. And so I did like their lawn work for a couple of weeks, which was really cool. So I got to like take care of like the gravestones and like mow the lawn and everything. So actually and meet the animals. Like I actually really enjoyed that community service because I was like, I feel like I'm actually doing something instead of just like taking a shelf apart and moving it. But yeah, my summer going into freshman year of college was rough. It was full of a lot of community service, a lot of the alcohol classes I actually kind of enjoyed. I thought the person that did them, her name was Sherry. I thought she was great. And yeah, like I had to be there, but I also like kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed like learning about alcohol and like um it that was a lot of people who were there for just underage drinking. So it was a lot of folks who were my age and who were in similar positions that I was. So like I actually enjoyed that. Um, but yeah, did not change my position on drinking at all.
So
No
all
lessons learned.
no, so all these punishments
Yeah.
really did nothing. And you know that, do you know that like over 85 or 90% of people that are in prison today are due to drugs and alcohol? Yeah,
Yes.
And so these punishments, it's like there's no education. So I'm glad that you did like the part that you did have education. And then you went off to college. And where did you go?
I went to Rutgers University in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Loved it. My first semester there though, partied a little too much. And I got a 1.3 GPA. So it it was rough. The adjustment into college was rough for me. Um, I just very much prioritized drink. Like I thought that the college experience was like we need to be drunk all the time. Thirsty Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. Sunday was like study day, but then like tequila Tuesdays, like trivia was on Wednesdays. Like it was a lot. So I got a 1.3 GPA, so I almost failed out. And I had to take this like class to like prove that I was like smart. It was called the Academic Success Seminar. I called it the ASS class because I thought that was appropriate. So I had to take that and like get my GPA back up and retake a couple of classes. So like that was tough. And I think my freshman year, I went to the hospital twice for drinking. Um, and still no lessons learned. Like, my sophomore year was pretty much the same thing. Um, I I think during my 4 years in undergrad, I think I went to the hospital at least 5 or 6 times. But my sophomore year, I really wanted to like I wanted to be more involved on campus. So I ended up getting a couple jobs. I was reffing intramural sports, which was really fun. I got a job being a fitness assistant at the gym. And then I also applied to be what's called an orientation leader. And so orientation leaders get to live there over the summer. And basically, the incoming freshman class, they come for and stay overnight. And your orientation leader is like your tour guide, and they teach you about Rutgers and like all this stuff. So I applied and I got that job, and I was so excited to like live on campus in the summer. So going the summer in between my sophomore and junior year, I moved in and I was like so ready to be an orientation leader. And the stigma with orientation leaders is that it's kind of like summer camp, right? Like you're all living together in the same building. There's 40 of you. There's going to be sex. There's going to be alcohol. It's all going to happen. So the first weekend there, we threw a party. I got extremely drunk, went to the hospital. They, and like I mentioned earlier about medical amnesty was in place, right? So like
Okay.
essentially, if my fellow orientation leaders call for help, I shouldn't get in any disciplinary trouble. So they called for help. They called my parents. My parents lived about 2 hours away, so it took them a little bit. So my boss ended up coming. And the 2 days later, she fired me. And oh, yeah. And I thought that that was so wrong because the entire orientation team was at this party. I was just the only one who got sent to the hospital. So I actually reached out to her boss. Her boss didn't take my side. Like she was like, no, like I trust what her name was Laura. I trust what Laura did. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I reached out to one of the vice chancellors of Rutgers and I sent him an email and I was like, this is what happened. If this is like what Laura is setting as the precedent for orientation, if this happens again where a fellow student needs, medical attention, they're not going to call because they're going to think, oh, our friend is going to get fired. So they're not going to call for help. That's not going to happen. So he basically threatened everybody's jobs and we had to go through this whole, I don't know, have you heard of restorative justice?
No.
So we had to go through this whole restorative justice process, and RJ is like becoming very popular at colleges because it's more of a instead of disciplinary, it's like a sit down with all parties, both parties, like the harmed and the perpetrator, and talk about it and be like, this is what happened, how can we all heal from this? So we had to go through this like extensive restorative justice process with the entire orientation team, and ultimately I got rehired.
Oh, God.
Yes, I got rehired. No lessons learned. The only lesson learned was to not drink in the apartments. So then we were drinking in cars and like off campus. Like it was more unsafe than it was anything else. But I killed it that summer, and I actually reapplied for the next summer to get promoted to be on lead team. So they had 12 lead team people. And I got that job. So I did orientation for 2 summers, which was incredible. My second summer, I was 21. The rules about alcohol were much stricter because of me, and I just felt like I was very much looked at negatively by my supervisors. Like they all saw me as like, and I also think that the orientation leader saw me as the one that ruined drinking for everybody. Like we can't drink anymore, and like it wasn't really me. It was like this Laura, it was her first summer. Like she had just been hired as the director. It was her. It was her views on alcohol that are the reason that all of this got put into place. You know what I mean? But I felt like a lot of the blame was on me. I felt like that's what I was like seen as, is the one who like ruined it for everybody. Um, so yeah, but I did that for 2 summers and it was great. And then my senior year, I was 21. It was a lot of fun, or I guess I was 22 my senior year, but it was a lot of fun. And then COVID happened. Um, and when COVID happened, it was just like the first month when it was like quarantine before like school ended, I was like, hell yeah. I was back with my sisters. Like we were having a blast. We were drinking every single night. It was so fun. And then it kind of got to the point where I didn't stop drinking every single night. And once I would start, I would keep going. So I was like drinking a lot every single night. And like I was still living at home, so like my parents saw this and like my mom would like talk to me about it, but like it never really like sat. Like I was like, whatever, mom, like I'm 20, 23 at this point, like I can do what I want, you know. And then the catalyst event for my sobriety was August 5th, 2021. Yesterday I actually hit 3 years sober, August 6th. Yes, very exciting. But August 5th, 2021, um, it was my friend's birthday and we had been drinking all day. And we went out actually in Philadelphia to like Woody's and like all these places. And I did that typical thing that I kept doing where I was angry drunk. And I was yelling at everybody and I was like yelling at my friends' friends and I was yelling at my friend whose birthday it was and like just getting so angry with everybody. And even my ex at the time, like I was yelling at him and like it was a bad night to put it mildly. And so the next day when I woke up and I realized like my ex was hurt by my actions, my friends were hurt by my actions, like it wasn't a good feeling. And I was like, I'm kind of tired of this. I'm tired of doing things that are hurting people. So yeah, I made that decision that day that I was not going to drink again. And I was very lucky because my family is so supportive. We actually we had the Jimmy Buffett concert like a week after that, that my whole family was going to, and that was kind of when they all realized like, oh, Trainor's like actually done drinking. Like I was just drinking water all night, and um, yeah, my mom like had a really good conversation about it. Like she was like, "Are you okay? Like if we drink, like is that something that you're comfortable with?" Um, and yeah, they're so supportive of me in every way. My friends are very supportive. Um, it also kind of showed me who wasn't supportive, which was also helpful in like being able to kind of like cut people off. Um, but yeah, it was great. It was hard, and it still is really, really hard. I went to a couple AAs and I did smart recovery as well. Um, which yeah, I found helpful and also not very helpful in some ways. But yeah, and then 3 years later, I'm still doing it. So
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have so many things to talk to you about. For one,
okay.
oh my gosh, that's what I've been doing. I've been taking notes. I've got like all these pieces of paper here with all these notes. I'm like the note taker.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because it sounds like in college you were kind of, I mean, you're obviously very bright and you were kind of like on, I love to use the analogy of a picket wooden fence. You know, it's got the
Mhm,
that you see where horses are a lot of times, and you have
mhm,
one leg that's like super rock star, super accomplished. You go for something and you really go for it. I mean, who would have gone to that extent at your age that would have said you were fired and you're like, oh no, I'm going to actually change the way this is all handled today.
Yes.
And I think that obviously takes gumption, and you've got passion, and you're like, I'm going to get whatever I want to get. But at the same time, anytime you'd have that sip of alcohol, all bets were off,
Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
you have one leg in this. I am going to get whatever I want. My life is going to be beyond my wildest dreams. To this, I'm going to self destruct. I'm going to have one sip, and it is going to take me down this path. And I think it's
Yep.
also really interesting because I talk about this a lot. I couldn't have one. I could only have, if I had one, I had 47. That's the
Yep.
way, yeah.
Yeah.
And, and for me, of 18 years on the 14th, I don't know what day this is dropping because I have a ton of podcasts and whatever. So, I really think to myself, like going to AA. So you never went to AA, and you went to a couple meetings and you didn't like it. You went
Yeah.
to Smart Recovery, you didn't like that.
Yeah. And
And
I do. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
you go ahead and then I'll talk.
I was just gonna say I'm retrying AA because I found one in Philly that is atheist agnostic. I think my problem with AA was like the religion aspect of it.
Hmm.
And like we talked about before we started recording, I was raised Catholic. I am no longer Catholic. And I don't I struggle to adhere to religion anymore. I just don't really agree with it. And so I found that aspect of AA difficult. And I know that they always say like, oh, your higher power can be like whatever you want it to be. And it's like, I just I didn't love it. And then Smart Recovery was just be all online, which I didn't like. I want to like meet people. So I found a group in Philly that's like atheist agnostic. And I'm like, it takes a lot of guts to like go to your first meeting, so I haven't gotten to that point yet. Just because I get very anxious about going to like new places. But I'm trying to like build it up. So hopefully I'll go because I feel like without that support, it's really difficult. And when things get hard and like I'm craving alcohol or anything like that, it's hard because like my family is so supportive, my friends are so supportive, but none of them are sober. And so it's really hard to like have that community when I don't. So like I really do want to try to like find folks in Philly who are also sober and also sharing similar experience as I am. But I haven't gotten there yet.
So most of my listeners are going to be like, how did this girl say that she was going to come on this podcast? And I'm going to say, I'm just going to tell my listeners, this is a God wink, by the way. This is God wink. And she doesn't understand that, but it's very interesting because so you don't listen to my podcast, or you would know that
Mhm.
God is everything for me. So I
Amen.
don't even I was raised Roman Catholic,
Hmm.
and I baptized my kids Roman Catholic, and I baptized actually the same church you grew up going to.
Yep.
And I left the Catholic Church because there were things going on there, and I had sons, and that everybody knows what went on in the Catholic Church about. It was about the 2000s. Henry was a baby at that point, and so was Ainsley. And and it was going on at our parish. So I got
Mhm.
really nervous about it. So I went to St. David's, which is the Episcopal Church, which is Catholic light. And I'm a fallen away Roman Catholic, so they call it. But when I came into AA and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited because I can finally graduate from something summa cum laude, because I do believe in that there is something that's bigger than me.
Yes.
I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that things happen for a reason,
Hmm.
and trusting in the process. And a lot of people faking it till you make it. Like, I believe that there has to be a God, because why did this? Why did you even? Why did I reached out to you and we were talking to each other online, and the fact that you said yes to come on here, and so all my listeners are like, oh my gosh, because I believe that doing this by yourself is really, really hard, right? I
It
went
is.
to
Yeah.
that's what I was at a meeting before jumped on here, right? I
Hmm.
drove 23 minutes to one I really like. I went there. I just left there. I ran back home to get on here with you. And I shared today, even in the meeting, which is kind of crazy, but I did share what my share today was about God. And in a week from today, I'll have 18 years, God willing. And and I'm going to announce it on here, and you don't really know Henry that much, but my son just got engaged, and
Mhm.
it's like, wow. Because I was a
Yeah.
fall down drunk, like the person you described, like really bright. I'm like really bright, like you are, right? I go after
Yeah.
everything I want, but then I get to this place where I'd be like, oh my God, that drink looks really good. And
Yeah.
everybody's talking about it. And that's what everybody does around here for fun.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So I went and I joined AA, and I learned these steps, which was finally I had this program that I could follow
Yeah.
because I was born in a really nice house in a really nice neighborhood with all the stuff you might want to need, a car, the family shoes, da 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 da, all that crazy stuff. But I had no rudder. If you look at
Mhm.
a sailboat, you need a rudder, right, to go. Like, what now? Where am I supposed to turn? And you have a really solid family, and I know that. And I
Yeah.
love your parents. I adore your parents. And we might look at things differently politically, which we obviously do because I am a huge Trumper and I believe in God. And I feel like that's the one thing that's missing in our world today is God, that
Mhm.
lack of God. And growing up, and I just talked about it in a podcast just recently. It's like I was born in 1968, the same year as your mom. You
Mhm.
know, I'm the same class as your mom. And growing up, we all had to go to church. And I know your dad went to like a totally Italian church, right? He went to the totally Italian church, so you had to be Italian to go to. I couldn't even go there because I'm Irish Catholic instead.
Mhm.
But there was something that I've always had, and I feel like it was a huge gift. This
Mhm.
ability to know that there was something bigger than me
Mhm.
that I couldn't touch and I couldn't feel. And I love the one thing I love about the Catholic Church and the Episcopal Church is this, like the whole ceremony of it, right? Like I love getting on my knees. I love standing up. I love all that. And I gave that gift to my kids, and they still practice, except for Hadley, which is so
Mhm.
ironic, right? My two boys are really, very Christian and believing. And I think that getting sober and staying sober, having that belief in something bigger than you
Yeah.
is an complete game changer. I wouldn't be sitting here with 18 years of continuous sobriety if I didn't have God. There's no way, right?
Yeah.
And just to give you a little more information, which is so crazy, but um, I don't know if you've ever heard of Medjugorje. Have you ever heard of Medjugorje?
No.
Okay, so when you were little, in 1981, long before you were even a twinkle in your mother's eye, because your mother was literally in middle school or elementary
Mhm.
school in 1981. I don't even remember this. But the Blessed Mother appeared in Medjugorje to 6 kids that were in this field in the middle. Medjugorje is in Bosnia Herzegovina, which is in the middle
Okay.
of nowhere. Just think about a place that is, they've had bombing there. It's near Croatia. It's like a very tumultuous place because there's Christianity and Islam, and there's all these fighting all the time over this religion stuff. Anyway, the Blessed Mother still keeps appearing there. And I had heard about it from a dear friend of mine, and I had reached out to somebody because I really wanted to get Jim Wahlberg. I don't know if you know who Mark Wahlberg is. Do you know who he is?
Yes.
The actor. Okay,
Mhm.
so he's a devout Catholic, and his brother Jim is one of us. Okay, it took him a
Mhm.
really long time to get sober, and I heard his story over Lent. It was on the Halo app, and I've got
Mhm.
so this is where God works in my life. So I really want to get Jim Wahlberg on my because he talks about how he was in prison for a long time, and
Mhm.
while he was in prison, I'm just going to the bless um Mother Teresa showed up at the prison to talk to the prisoners. And he
Oh
had a
wow.
spiritual awakening there, which, as you can
Yeah.
imagine, if you're sitting in jail, and he's sober now and his story is unbelievable. So I called somebody. I'm like, I got to get Jim Wahlberg on my show. What do we got to do to get him on my show? And I called this woman, Ann Vucek, and I said, do you know Jim Wahlberg? She's like, I could probably find somebody that does. And I said, uh, I'd really like to have him on my show. And she goes, well, we're going to Medjugorje. Do you want to go? And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, I haven't been a practicing Catholic in like 100 years, right?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like you about the whole religion thing. There's a reason for this story. So I get on a plane. This is just a couple months ago, by the way. I don't
Mhm.
know anybody. I meet a woman Holly Carney, who's a big movie producer from LA. I
Okay.
meet her. I'm like, come with me. I meet her in Miami airport. I'd never met her in my life. We get on
Mhm.
a plane. We go to Rome. We go from Rome, and we're running through the airport with all of our luggage. And we get on a plane, and we go to Split, Croatia, and then we get on a bus, and we go all the way to Medjugorje. And I get there kind of like you are with this whole like I want to say shield, right? I got
Mhm.
this big shield up over my heart,
Mhm.
because of whatever I'd gone through in my life.
Mhm.
And there I learned to let everything go and be trusting and just say, I might not be able to tell you what it is. I mean, I can tell you what it is in my heart, but to speak to you,
Mhm.
you know, it's like willing to just take that step, because doing this thing recovery that we're doing is a really deadly disease, right? I think you
Yeah.
know that from your family members.
Mhm.
And human beings are fallible, right? Doesn't matter if you're if the president of the United States, an attorney, a doctor, a lawyer, it doesn't matter who you are. We all let people down. Everybody lets everybody down, right? We've got
Mhm.
siblings that'll sometimes let you down, right? Like your mom and dad might let you down. Everybody will let you down in life because they're human beings and we're sinners. That's just what we do, okay?
Mhm.
But when we believe in something bigger that we can't see, I can feel it sometimes, I can say truthfully, but I've been praying for a long time.
Mhm.
And it's just your life can be amazing. It's just getting to a place where you go, I'm willing to do something and learn something, even though I feel like I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm going to just do it anyway.
Yeah. I feel like, and given your podcast and your listeners, they may not agree with me. I feel like I struggle to believe in a higher power. I like you touched upon earlier, the Catholic Church is like it's got its issues for sure. And I don't agree with like a lot of what the Catholic Church does, and I just struggle overall with religion. And I've explored other religions like Unitarianism and all these like other kind of religions to see if I could believe in a higher power. But at the end of the day, I believe in myself, and I think that everything I've done myself and with like my own strength and everything inside of me. And I just don't think that I need this higher power that I need to believe in. And that's my point of view on it. And I completely respect like everybody and like their religion and what people choose to believe. I think that, my own family, I have family members who are still practicing Catholics and um, who want to believe in that higher power. And I think I completely respect that. It's just looking at like my own sobriety journey and everything that I've done, I feel like that was my choice. And I've been the one that has been my driving power. And that's how I've kind of taken like my recovery in stride.
It'll be interesting to see what it's like because in 10 years from now, because it'll be really interesting because it's very lonely to do it by
Hmm.
yourself. It really is. It's very lonely. And it's really hard when you don't have it's like when the book of Alcoholics Anonymous was written, it was written by Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson, right? And these
Hmm.
two guys that got together and they could say, and they both were very obviously they were members of the Oxford group. I don't know if you know what that is, but a very Christian group, very Christian.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
they read the Bible, and a lot of the stuff that's in this big book is a lot of stuff that comes from the Bible. And what they say in there is like faith without works is dead, like having a faith in a belief. Because if we don't, then we live in a lot of fear a lot of times, right? We got a lot of
Hmm.
fear of like, what's going to happen? And getting to a place where you just get to go, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So being open is what I would be
Yes.
my recommendation to you because
Yes.
you're still young. I know that you're still young and you, like my daughter, are just you guys get this thing that's like, I'm going to be like this. And it's like the older you get, the more things change and become more like it just happens. And so I will say this, don't ever stop giving up on
Hmm.
trying to find what that may be, that
Yeah.
thing that you believe in, because it truly, for me, going to Medjugorje and where I am today with my faith at 55, I'm 55,
Hmm.
and it's a life beyond my wildest dreams. It truly is. So
Yeah.
I don't want you to miss it. That's my one thing I want to say to you, because it will make your life so much richer in a way that I can't even explain. But it's just so you'd never know that you're not alone. And we think
Mhm.
that we do so much, but we really, I don't know. I see so many things that happen to people that I'm like, how the heck? Oh yeah, something bigger than me did that. So
Yeah.
it gives you hope. So today, I pray for you that you do. I do pray for you. I do pray for you. I big time do, because I do believe that it's like there's a reason that you were raised a certain way and had, you know, it's in you somewhere. It might not be in that building you went to as a child, but it might be somewhere else. So don't ever give up on searching for that. So today, I'm going to fast forward now after I
Okay.
gave you a little of my lecture, if you want to call it that. I just want to say, because it's been, I love you guys. I love your family and I love you. And
Mhm.
I want you to stay on this journey. And sometimes if you don't have something bigger than you, it can get really scary, really scary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we live in a really scary world and it's really dark. And to have something that has light, like I am all about the light. Like, as you can
Mhm.
see where I live and what I'm dressed in, I'm like, come on, give me more light. I need more light.
Yeah.
I don't want any more dark. There's enough darkness. I want to get some light because it brings you joy, right? It brings you
Mhm.
joy. Like when you go to a Jimmy Buffer, well, God rest his soul. Maybe now
Yeah.
now, if you go to a Kenny Chesney concert, it's like that's like there's so much light and joy there, right? And it's like
Yeah.
that I think is comes from magic that we get from something that again we can't feel and we can't touch that I call God. But
Mhm.
so you graduated from Rutgers, which now I know Rutgers, even when you were there, has a big sobriety presence. They even have a
Yeah.
school for sobriety. And they were
Yeah.
one of the there and a place outside Augsburg University, which is outside of in Minnesota, actually
Yeah.
near Hazleton. It was the
Mhm.
first, and
Yes.
Rutgers, I think, was the second, weren't they?
Yes. I
Yeah.
think. I actually am very I know the head of the recovery community at Rutgers, Keith. His name's Keith Murphy. He's great. Um, and when I met him a year into my sobriety when I was already working at Penn, and I like introduced myself, and he was like, "Why didn't I know you when you were at Rutgers?" And I was like, "That's a great question. I did not choose to be sober at Rutgers." But yeah, no, Rutgers recovery community is incredible, and like it's very robust, and yeah, it's amazing. So
I love it because I know
yeah.
a lot of schools now, including Penn State, have done,
Hmm.
I've learned a lot from Rutgers and what they're doing
Yep.
because it is becoming so transparent. And especially with what's going on with fentanyl today, because we're
Yes.
losing more people to fentanyl than we did in World War II, which is insane. Insane
Hmm.
with what's coming over the border, thanks to Biden and Kamala Harris. I had to throw it out there, like keep it open, baby, bring these drugs over. And so many families have lost loved ones, and and it's hard because you're in this age group that I find it's so hard. Again, I spoke about darkness because you guys see death more than I ever saw. And again,
Hmm.
brains aren't even developed fully and you're watching. And how do you deal with death, like death and feel if you don't have a God? Like I can't even imagine. It's like how do you deal with all these feelings of like, oh my gosh, somebody I just loved like I didn't know anybody who really died until my grandmother died, and I
Hmm.
was kind of older.
Yeah. I think honestly, like I lost a family member that was really close, that my whole family was really close with, and it was like super unexpected, and I think that that honestly it had the opposite effect than what it sounds like other people experience. I just didn't understand how there can be a God who would take away someone so young, so healthy, so vibrant, and just like I just can't comprehend how there could be a God with that. And that kind of really solidified my stance on religion and a higher power. Um, and it definitely I do struggle with it. I was raised believing in heaven and hell. I was raised in believing in an afterlife. And I do think that I like to believe there is something after death. I just don't like to put much thought into like what that could be. Um,
It's so
but
funny because I think of this person and I know who you're speaking of, and you can say her name. It's so amazing because I believe, and because I've lost so many friends. I've
Hmm.
lost so many friends. I have so, and especially I know so many people that have died from this disease in my life. Like
Hmm.
I have so many friends, and you'd think I'd be like mad at God about like my best friend. My best. I've lost a lot of best friends due to
Hmm.
this disease, and but I believe that there is a heaven for sure. And I
Hmm.
know that they're there. And
Yeah.
I think, oh my gosh, in so many ways, I'm like, you're so lucky because it's beautiful there and it's amazing and you don't have to hurt anymore. And we're stuck down here in this
Yeah.
place that is so hard. And
Yeah.
I just sometimes think like, oh my gosh, well, one day I'll get there and I'll get to see them again and give them a hug. And I know, and I'm gonna finish this part. I'm just gonna say, I really believe that this person is your guardian angel. And there is a reason that you got sober. And that person is with you every single solitary day. And
Hmm.
that is why you were sober. It is not because of your own will. You have somebody with you. You have an angel with you everywhere you go. And she loves you so, so much. And she hasn't
Yes.
gone anywhere. She's just not here anymore. She gets to be in the pretty place. And she has hope for you. And she wants you to stay in this place of sobriety because it is so hard. Once you have it, if you lose your sobriety, I mean, I met a woman this morning, she had 5 years, she picked up and she
Hmm.
is just struggling and struggling. And I have seen that so many times, trainers, so many times. And it is just, if you have it now, you got to hold on tight. And
Hmm.
if your higher power has to be that person that you lost, that
Hmm.
can be your person. That can be your higher power right now. And your grandmother, too. I know your grandmother, too. I
Yeah.
mean, you
My
have a
mom.
lot. Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of higher powers around you, and I like to call them your guardian angels because they are with you everywhere you go, and every night you have to say thank you and know that they're right there. And you might not, and sometimes you even ask for a sign. I see a
Hmm.
butterfly, I see a cardinal, I see a red ladybug, and I get this calm in my heart.
Hmm.
So just think about this conversation that we've had. I really want
I
because I
will.
know that they're there because it's like I don't have, we have this thing called an ego. And
Hmm.
I always say it's easing God out. That's what it stands for is my ego is like, I got this, I got this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, wait a minute, I got shit. Let's be honest. I got no
Yeah.
control of anything. I could go out there right now and get hit by a car. I have no idea what's going to happen. So just knowing that I've got some humility, which is something they talk a lot about, which is knowing that I'm not so powerful. There has to be something that's got me on the side that's going, you know what, I'm just going to have you go this way rather than going this way. So just it
Hmm.
could help you just to use that. So you graduate, you decide to get sober, you quit drinking, you went cold turkey, you've been cold turkey for
Yep.
3 years,
Yep.
and then so you get a job, you graduate, and how did this? So COVID's over, and you're like, okay, I've got to get a job. Was that how it worked?
No, I wish. So, I graduated. Um, it was still, I graduated in May of 2020. So it was still the height of the pandemic. So I was debating between public health and higher education. So I kind of went the public health route and I actually contact traced for the state of Pennsylvania. Um, for I think 8 months I did that in 2021 to 2022.
Wait
Um,
a minute, what does that mean? You went to see who had COVID and who didn't have COVID. What was that? What does that mean?
Yeah, or I'm sorry, 2020 to 2021. So contact tracing was basically working for a call center, which I don't know if you've ever done that, but that job is hell on earth. Any call center is terrible. Customer
Sounds
service
horrible.
sucks.
I always,
Yeah.
because I hang up on those people all the time.
Yeah, 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 that's pretty much you were hanging up on me probably. But we would get like a name and that was somebody who was exposed to COVID. So whether it was a child in a classroom, somebody who worked in the hospitals, like this was like pre-vaccine, pre all of that. And we would call them and just be like, "Hi, you've been exposed to COVID. Here's the quarantine guidelines for like the state." Um, and that was pretty much it. And we were collecting public health data because a lot of people would be like, why do you need to know like my demographic information and all of this? And it's because there's a lot of health disparities between people of color versus people of different sexualities and like the care that they receive. So we collect all of that demographic data for the state of Pennsylvania, which Pennsylvania has a very broad spectrum of, you know, we're a swing state, right? So right wing versus left wing, and like the COVID pandemic, some people were like all for it and like wanted to hear from me, and then there were other people who were like, I want nothing
Well,
to do with
all
this,
for it.
leave me
It wa I
alone.
mean, wait a minute, wait, we gotta change it. Nobody
Like,
was all for it. I mean,
not all for it, but like all understanding of quarantine guidelines and me calling about contact tracing
right.
and very understanding of that aspect of things. And then there were other folks who were like, I want nothing to do with this. COVID's not real. I'm not going to quarantine. Goodbye. Um, so I got the whole gamut of it, and it
That's
was it
humbling. That is
it,
humbling.
it was, yeah. I heard a lot of interesting things from some people. I was still drinking during this time.
Oh, so that must
So
have been even really more fun to keep your mouth shut.
yeah, yeah. And like this was like the height of my drinking. So like I would be drinking like during work and stuff. So it was
Shit show.
yeah, a shit show is putting that mildly. So then I stopped doing that the summer of 2021, and I was like applying to other jobs and like I really didn't know. And then that was also the summer I got sober that August. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I was still in between public health and higher ed. So I saw this position at Penn for a health educator. So a health educator, what they were looking for was somebody who would educate students on topics like sexual health, nutrition, substance use, sleep, pretty much all topics of health. And I was like, I could do that. I love that. Like, so, and my focus was substance use. When I was in college, I was a substance use peer educator. So I was like, I can do that. I know all about substance use. Like, and at this point, I was newly sober, about a month sober when I started that job. And 6 months into that job, they realized like Penn didn't really have, the University of Pennsylvania didn't really have anything for students in recovery. And I revamped their entire substance use group education. I was like working with students one-on-one, but they realized that they didn't have anybody focusing on that like recovery community. And so I mentioned to my supervisors that I am 6 months sober. It would be something I'm interested in like kind of building up at Penn. And so my focus really shifted from like all topics of health education to really substance use. So I revamped our entire substance use education. It's now a choose your own adventure workshop where students go through a night out, and we talk about all different substances, how they interact with one another, harm reduction strategies that you can use to stay safe, to make sure your friends are staying safe. And it's really fun. Like it's very fun. Students enjoy it. I feel like they learn a lot from it. And then there's the other aspect of my job where if a student goes to the emergency room for substance use, I'll meet with them. And it's usually like a 10 to 30-minute meeting where we just talk about like, hey, what happens? Let's go through your night out. Where could we have gone differently? And it's just a very educational but supportive conversation that we have. And then there's the other part where I'm building our recovery community. So I think it was I want to get this right, March of 2023, I had been working at Penn for about a year and a half. They posted a position within my office for substance use specialist is like the official title, where my focus would be what I was essentially already doing, but like with that like specific focus. So I applied and I had to go through like the whole interview process, which is like very stressful to interview with people that you already know, because I was like, if I don't get this, this is going to be so embarrassing. But I got it. I've been in that role since March of 23, so coming up on like a year and a half ish. And yeah, we had our inaugural year last year, or like first academic year with the recovery community. I had 5 students who came and just like, yeah, I don't really format it in any way. It's kind of just like a conversation, students supporting each other. I would like it to like evolve and grow, and I use Rutgers as a framework, which is why I work with like Keith Murphy and stuff, because like eventually we would like to have like on campus living for our students who are in recovery and like other support systems for them. Um, but yeah, it's a big job. I do a lot, but I love every single aspect of it. I think that sometimes it can hit a little too close to home. And it can be difficult talking about substance use all the time when it's like, obviously, that's what I used to love doing. And so, like, it can hit a little too close to home. But I'm very fortunate in my office is like, full of people who support my recovery journey and who are just like so supportive and like so understanding. And so yeah, I love it. I love what I do. I'm also getting my master's in higher education. So I'll be graduating hopefully this upcoming May with my master's, which is just so cool. And so yeah, I love wherever, like I don't think that if I hadn't gotten sober, I don't think I would be where I am today. And I think that that is a really cool thing to think about. So
Well, I have to say, for one, congratulations. I think
thank
that
you.
on so many levels, and again, you're not alone. So don't think that there's no God or any fairies around you
Yes.
and angels around you, because they definitely are.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting because I think it would be cool if you guys had your own meeting on Penn's campus, because I know St. Joe's does and Villanova
Yep.
does,
Yep.
and that would, because I've been at those meetings many times, because that's like the young people is who I love to work with, and it would be so great. And I think that I just wish you the best. I just wish
Thank
you
you.
so much on this journey, and I pray that you do find that higher power, because it will be a game changer for you. I know that in my heart.
Yeah.
And it might not be in a Catholic church, but it could be what you design on your own. And it might be in a Catholic church. You never know. You never just never say never. Because who would have ever
Okay.
thought I would have been here at 18 years? I can't even believe it. It's
Yeah.
been, again, a life beyond my wildest dreams. I wish you so much. I wish you the best. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming on the show. I
Yeah,
really
thanks for having
appreciate
me.
it. It's been awesome to see you.
Yeah,
Send your family my love, and
I will.
I will let you know when this is up. But
All right.
if you enjoyed today's podcast, I will have I almost just called you Maddie. I will have Trainor's email address on there and a way for you to get in touch with her. And I just want you to know that if you're out there, you're not alone, and that there is a different way of life that you can find, and have a life like Trainer does, which she's like keeps doing it. She keeps doing it, keeps doing it, keeps doing it, and it's amazing. And she obviously has angels next to her. I know it. I can feel it, by the way. And I know that life is going to be amazing. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm excited for Penn to have you. It's pretty exciting. And for you to get your master's. Oh my
Woo!
gosh, it's so amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
Congratulations on
Thank
your
you.
3 years as well from yesterday.
Thank you.
That's huge.
Yes.
And again, if you're out there, you know you're not alone, and keep getting busy.